Black girl tripped at a beauty pageant. 5 minutes later, the whole crowd was on its knees. What happens when a girl who once fell on stage rises so high, she shatters the entire scoring system? What followed her return left the entire district in a silence no one knew how to break. Some girls dream of tiaras and some girls dream of finally being seen, not tolerated, not quietly allowed, not celebrated in spite of. Amari James wasn't reaching for a crown. She was just trying to reach the part of life where someone called her name and actually remembered it 3 minutes later. That's all she wanted, to be the girl they didn't look through, step around, or praise with backhanded grace like, "You're so pretty," for a black girl. And now, standing behind the faded maroon curtains of the Tri-County Regional Beauty Pageant in Georgia, she could feel her ribs tighten under the rhinestone stiff bodice she bought secondhand. Her hands were trembling in a way that had nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with a history of being expected to shrink. Her mama, rest her soul, would have told her, "Baby, you shine even when the lights are off. Don't let them dim that." But Mama wasn't in the room. Mama wasn't even in this world. Cancer stole her 2 years back and left Amari with Aunt Nina, who had 3 jobs and not enough minutes in the day for edges, affirmations, or big dreams. So Amari had done it all herself. Learned how to braid her own hair, borrowed a dress 2 sizes too big, and cinched it with safety pins. Scraped together $20 for the drugstore body shimmer that promised to make her glow like sunrise over Atlanta. She didn't need perfection. She needed presence. Then the announcement crackled over the cheap PA system. "Next contestant, Amari James." That was her cue. She stepped into the spotlight, and it slapped her in the face like a truth nobody wanted to hear. The soles of her shoes clung to the glossy stage floor like they were scared too. The music began. Her body remembered every count of 8, rehearsed 100 times between Aunt Nina's laundry piles and the smell of frying cabbage. She moved with grace that wasn't taught in studios, but earned in silence. And then, just as the beat dropped and her confidence started to catch rhythm with her spirit, it happened. Her heel caught the edge of a stray piece of stage tape. Not even the thick kind, the flimsy stuff that peels up when humidity and bad planning meet. Her left leg buckled, her knee twisted, and her whole body followed gravity like it owed it money. She hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the speakers and ricocheted across the stunned silence of the room. And for one long second, nobody moved. You could hear a single judgmental breath, then a chuckle, not loud, but it sliced. And then came the voice. Male, drawling, marinated in bourbon, and that slow-cooked southern smugness you can't buy, only inherit. "Well now, there's your inclusivity at work. Can't even walk straight, shouldn't be on stage." He didn't say her name, but he didn't have to. It was the father of one of the other girls, the same man who'd been overheard whispering to a judge before the show. "Hope y'all pick someone who actually represents the county, not just check a diversity box." Amari lay there, her forehead scraped, blood blooming along her chin like a stamp she didn't ask for. But she didn't cry. She didn't curse. She didn't shake. She got up, slowly, deliberately, like a phoenix with no time for ashes. She stood, straightened, bowed, and walked off stage like the fall had been part of the routine. Like she wasn't just humiliated in front of 100 eyes trained to only see one kind of beauty. Backstage was cold. Not temperature cold, silence cold. "You threw off the sequence?" hissed the coordinator, a woman with a smile sharp enough to slice taxes. "Now the judges have to recalculate." Amari didn't respond. She just kept walking, into the dressing room where the air went dead quiet. Even the girls who, moments ago, were posing for selfies in front of the glittery event banner didn't make eye contact. All except one, Chloe, new girl, rainbow patch stitched to her backpack. She approached silently and offered a damp makeup wipe. "You were strong," she whispered. "I would have cried." "I wanted to," Amari thought, "but I don't get that luxury anymore." The next morning, school greeted her like she was a one-hit viral joke. The video had already made the rounds. Someone in the cafeteria had edited it to slow motion, complete with dramatic orchestral music and mock captions like, "Amari's journey to the center of the earth." Someone else shouted across the lunch line, "Yo, Amari, auditioning for America's Got Gravity?" Even Coach, the one who always preached discipline and respect, quipped during PE, "Balance is key, right, Miss James?" It wasn't humor. It was humiliation wrapped in sarcasm, served on a tray of fake laughs and empty concern. But the worst came with the principal's summons. She walked into his office, sterile, fluorescent lit, smelling like lemon cleaner and denial. He sat behind his desk, fingers folded over a tablet, eyes not quite meeting hers. We've seen some reaction online, he began, the way people talk when they're preparing to gaslight you politely. The video, well, it stirred some emotions. And I just want to ask, you're not trying to let this incident reflect poorly on the school or the pageant, right? My incident? Amari's eyebrows shot up. Falling is a mistake, but watching me fall and enjoying it, now that's the problem. Aloud, she said calmly, I was dancing. I didn't record it. I didn't post it. That shadow, that's not mine. That's yours. And for the first time in that room, he blinked and stayed quiet. That evening, Amari pulled out her phone. No filters, no edits. Just her, bare-faced, with a cracked lip and tired eyes, in front of a poster that read, You are the victory. She hit record. I didn't fall because I'm black, she said. But it seems like that's why y'all laughed. If a little girl stumbles and the world cheers, maybe the issue isn't the stumble. Maybe it's the world. She posted the video and went to bed. By morning, she wasn't just the girl who fell. She was the girl who made people sit up. Thousands of shares. Comments from moms, from teachers, from women who had been that girl. I fell too, but no one laughed. I was white. My daughter competed. I never noticed how the other girls disappeared when they got too bold. Thank you for opening my eyes. You're not just a dancer, you're a mirror. You made us look. By sunset, her phone buzzed with a new number. Amari, this is Lauren Dale. I run a project about girls who've been taught to be invisible. What you did, it changed something. Are you ready for what comes next? When your phone won't stop ringing and the screen lights up with Georgia Department of Education, you don't need a crystal ball to know you've stepped on something tender, something systemically sore and deeply protected. Amari James wasn't a politician, wasn't an activist, wasn't even old enough to vote, but there she was, curled up in Aunt Nina's sun-bleached porch chair, scrolling through comments like they held the answer to a question she never meant to ask. Why does standing up hurt other people so much? While other teenagers posted selfies with whipped cream coffee and designer dogs, Amari, with her scraped chin and silent posture, had become a symbol. Not on purpose, not with branding. Just by standing the wrong way, after falling the right way, she cracked the floor between how things are and how things can't keep being. And in the principal's office, in district headquarters, in the inboxes of school board members across 3 counties, people scrambled like someone had pulled a fire alarm. And in a way, that's exactly what had happened. Except it wasn't fire in the walls, it was fire in the minds. And that fire looked like a black girl with cornrows, a bandage on her chin, and a voice they couldn't mute no matter how many emails they sent to each other saying, let's monitor this situation closely. Aunt Nina had been quiet for most of the week, worked her double shifts, folded towels in silence, and watched the news like it was personal. But that morning, she sipped her tea and said without looking up, You know, I used to think that if you were polite enough, humble enough, worked hard enough, they'd at least leave you alone. I see now. You stood up, baby. And when you stood, you said no. That's what did it. I just danced, Amari replied, barely louder than a whisper. Mm-hmm, Nina said, setting her cup down. Well, apparently your knees landed right on somebody's throat. The next day, it wasn't a phone call. It was a knock on the door. Lauren Dale stood on the porch. Producer, activist, truth digger. She walked like her opinions didn't need permission. With her came a cameraman and an invitation. We're filming a series on how systems dress discrimination in rules and regulations, Lauren said. We've got footage from the pageant, from judges, from leaked meeting notes. We've got jurors speaking anonymously, but we don't have you. And you are the center of this story. Amari didn't answer immediately. Her eyes flicked to Aunt Nina, who for the first time in days wasn't wearing her uniform. She was just sitting, just being. I don't want to be someone's project, Amari said, her voice steady but small. I'm not a token. You're not a token, Lauren shot back. You're a hammer. And it's time to break the glass. They recorded the interview in the back room of the local library. No makeup, no script, just a camera, a light, and the truth. I don't blame the contest for my fall, Amari said, but I do blame the way they responded to it. The laughter, the silence, the comments. It wasn't surprise. It was satisfaction. You could feel the comfort people had watching me fall. It gave them something. And if you feel relief when someone else is hurt, maybe you've stopped being a person. The room was still. Not just quiet, still. That kind of still where even the air listens. And that's when it became clear. Amari wasn't venting. She wasn't seeking sympathy. She was filing a report, A report for every girl who got marked down for lack of polish, when what they really meant was too black. For every hairstyle labeled unprofessional, every voice called too loud, every smile told to soften because you look aggressive when you smile that wide, sweetheart. While the footage was still being edited, the world beyond the library room ignited. Independent journalists published judging sheets. On paper, the pattern screamed. Contestants of color scoring high in talent consistently failed to place. White contestants with lower scores advanced. Someone dug up emails. Casual racism wrapped in professionalism. One line read, "She's passionate, but not quite pageant ready. Too urban." Local activists launched a petition demanding accountability. Over 30,000 signatures in 2 days. A parent coalition from across the region demanded a full audit, and an Atlanta-based civil rights law firm issued a formal letter. They wanted a third-party investigation. The name Amari stopped being a name. It became a hashtag, a protest sign, a question shouted into microphones at city meetings. Why does one girl falling say so much about all of us? The answer? Because people were tired. Tired of watching some folks fall and get laughed at, while others get carried on invisible escalators of privilege. Tired of the silence that follows truth and the applause that follows denial. 3 days later, Lauren called again. "There's a rally," she said. "County Square, in front of the council building. The press will be there. Teachers, alumni, maybe even some former judges. They don't want your statement on video anymore. They need it in person. You ready?" Amari hadn't slept that night. She paced her room, danced barefoot on the worn carpet between the bookshelf and the bed frame. The only place where no one judged her movements. The only place where she could fall and get up without anyone clapping or scoffing. Just her and the rhythm of her own breath. When morning came, she didn't put on a dress, no heels, no glitter, just jeans, a plain white t-shirt, braids tied back, no apologies, no performance, just her. The square was already filling by the time she arrived. At first, curious strangers, then faculty members from her school, then parents she didn't know, then a former judge. And finally, the actual panel from the pageant, standing off to the side, awkward and exposed. In the middle, a microphone. Amari walked toward it. The crowd hushed. She didn't clear her throat, didn't rehearse a smile. She just spoke. "I don't want to be your pain. I don't want to be your lesson. I just wanted to dance. But if one fall is enough to shake your whole competition to its core, then maybe it wasn't me that fell. Maybe it was all of you, a long time ago. And maybe you've just been too comfortable lying down." Silence. Then, movement. A girl in the crowd, wearing a faded Finalist 2019 t-shirt, dropped to her knees. Then, a teacher. Then a woman who competed in 1987. And then, in the whole square, one by one, people lowered themselves. Not in protest, not in shame, but in recognition. They knelt not because someone told them to, but because something inside them had finally stood up. They didn't know what to do with the silence. For years, they'd been hand-fed the noise of approval, the polite claps, the rustling of checks from sponsors, the hollow cheers of parents desperate to buy one more crown, one more plastic validation of their child's worth. But after Amari James stepped forward on that county plaza stage, no tiara, no script, just bone-deep truth, and the crowd bent its knees like a congregation bowing before conviction, there was nothing left to say, just silence, dense, uncomfortable, undeniable. And silence, as it turns out, doesn't fit into an agenda. It doesn't translate well in press releases. It can't be trimmed or spun or edited into something palatable. It sits in a room like smoke that won't leave, curling into every plan, every statement, every carefully worded denial. The first to try breaking that silence was Mrs. Curtis, president of the county council. A woman whose smile never quite touched her eyes, whose manicure whispered, "I support progress, as long as it's profitable." She stepped onto the government building's front steps, gripped the mic like it might burn her fingers, and delivered her best attempt at empathy. "We thank you for your honesty. We hear you. We, like a scratched vinyl skipping over truth it couldn't carry." Amari stood nearby, arms at her sides, no sign, no slogans, just eyes too steady, too honest for adults who'd trained themselves to avoid mirrors. She wasn't armed with outrage. She was armed with clarity, and clarity can be terrifying. "You don't hear anything," Amari said, not loud, but clear enough to cut through microphone feedback and PR rehearsals. Even the birds on the telephone wire paused. "You're not afraid of us, or change. You're afraid we won't fall quietly anymore. While administrators scrambled to call meetings with titles like Strategic Image Response Planning and Narrative Control Sessions, the rest of the world, the real one, moved faster, smarter, louder. On social media, there were no corporate filters, no watered-down messages. Kneel with Amari, no more pretty lies. The stage is ours. The video of Amari's speech passed 4 million views in just 2 days. More than just shares, it created aftershocks. Comments weren't just, "You go, girl." They were paragraphs, stories, confessions. From girls who'd been told their lips were too full, their voices too firm, their curls too unruly. From teachers ashamed they hadn't noticed. From judges, silent now, who saw themselves reflected, not as fair, but complicit. Talk shows wanted her. Teen magazines reached out. Lifestyle platforms wanted the girl who redefined grace. But Amari answered every request the same way. "I'm not a banner. I'm a mirror. If you want to talk, bring the girls who fell too. Let them speak." And just like that, a format no one expected was born. No stage, no spotlight, no moderator, just a circle. Amari showed up, not as a keynote speaker, but as one of them. Black girls ages 11 to 17 gathered in circles across school gyms, public libraries, community parks. They didn't talk about eyeliner or which brand of lotion made your skin glow. They talked about the fear of raising a hand too quickly, about braids being labeled distracting, about being told to smile softer, walk less loud, express less, about being told, subtly or directly, that being themselves meant being too much, too much. The universal code for too black to be allowed. Amari listened, cried once, laughed too, because even under centuries of pressure, joy finds a way. Her presence wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. She wasn't there to inspire. She was there to share the mic. Meanwhile, cracks started forming in the contest that once crowned perfection. Mrs. Devereaux, the one who hissed, "You disrupted the sequence," the day Amari fell, suddenly resigned. The official reason, health concerns. The unofficial one, someone discovered she'd been quietly deleting applications when the race box read black. Her inbox couldn't hide forever. Then came Mr. Wade, a judge. Anonymous interview. Face blurred, voice modified, but the message unfiltered. "They told us to judge by professional standards," he said. But when one girl did African-rooted hip-hop, it was unrefined. When another did Irish step, it was artistic and invigorating. Same energy, different pigment, different result. Within a week, the state opened an inquiry. The competition was frozen indefinitely. All judges suspended. The Department of Education demanded an overhaul of the rules. But the real rupture happened behind closed doors. At the sponsor meeting, it was supposed to be routine. Muffins, thank yous, budget talks. But the sponsors weren't sipping tea this time. From local bakeries to the pharmacy chain CEO, they came armed with questions. Why, in the last 10 years, have only 2 out of 67 winners been non-white? Why don't judges receive anti-bias training? Why is traditional beauty never actually defined, but always understood? There were no answers, at least none that didn't sound absurd. One organizer choked on his own attempt at context. Another just left the room. While the institution fumbled, Amari prepared for something else entirely. The first ever visible festival, a celebration of not just movement and rhythm, but of all the things that had been told to hush, to smooth out, to shrink. It wasn't a gala, it wasn't a brand deal, it was a homecoming. Held in an old unused community barn, the space wasn't decorated with balloons or stage lights. Instead, the walls were covered in printouts, screenshots of real comments the girls had received. "You'll never win with a nose like that. Too loud. Too aggressive. No one wants to see that on stage." Each participant taped up one that had been said to her. And then, one by one, they crossed them out in red marker. Amari stepped onto the makeshift platform in sneakers, jeans, and a t-shirt. No sequins, no glitter, no pre-approved speech, just presence. "I fell," she said, "but I wasn't the only one. I just didn't know yet how many of us were already down there, just trying to get back up. If you only want one kind of girl on your stage, prepare yourself. Because we're not asking anymore. We're arriving." The crowd didn't cheer. They stood, in stillness, in power, in understanding. Because sometimes the loudest applause is silence with its eyes wide open. That day didn't end a competition. It ended the illusion that the stage had ever truly been open to everyone. And from the ashes of glitter and gatekeeping, something new began to rise. 2 weeks had passed since the Visible Festival, 2 weeks of Amari navigating hallways where the echoes of her fall still lingered like ghosts. Yet today she sat alone on the worn concrete steps outside her high school, eyes fixed on the entrance she once re-entered bloodied and broken, under a silence so heavy it felt like an accusation. Above the doors fluttered a new banner: "We listen, we see, we learn." Perfectly corporate, sterile, like someone had wiped a sneer off their conscience with a damp rag and hung it as decoration. Inside, the administration announced a new module: inclusive ethics, stuffed twice a month into curriculum maps, referencing Toni Morrison quotes and TED Talks like moral props. Teachers whispered behind closed doors, laughing meanly at the safety of reforms born of fear. "You've got to say black now, or heaven forbid someone calls CNN. We have equity," right up until parents see overtime pay on the lesson plan. To Amari, it looked like a farce. Reforms imposed by panic are like cheap makeup in humidity, lasting only until the first drop of sweat. But then came the letter. Not from a TV show, not from the mayor's office, from the National Foundation for Movement and Culture, extended to her. It wasn't an honorary mention or a cameo. It was a real offer to become a mentor, a central figure in a program called Stage Without Exception. Aunt Nina read the letter 3 times over, voice trembling. "Is this real? Are they actually paying you?" "They are. They're giving a studio. And trust, without ifs." The space they offered wasn't glamorous. Bare concrete floors, tall pane windows, the smell of dust and aged wood. But it felt like home. No scores, no judges, no empty smiles, just breath, movement, and freedom. One by one, girls began to appear. One wore a tightly wrapped hijab, because daddy doesn't approve. Another had scars she tried to hide under foundation. Another sobbed in front of the mirror, unable to accept that her face could belong in beauty. Amari didn't tell them they were beautiful. She said, "You are you." That alone is more than most are ever ready for. Meanwhile, in the district, decisions unraveled. Miss Young Georgia was dead. In its place rose Stage Without Exception, with a brand new jury, new criteria, new policy demanding total transparency, anti-bias training for every judge, and an outright prohibition on citing traditional beauty without detailed public explanation. And yes, guess who led it? That same Lauren Dale, the project leader who'd become something like a behind-the-scenes minister of truth in the world where beauty used to be unquestioned. They invited Amari to attend the first ceremony under this new banner. She hesitated. "I don't want to go back on that same stage, Aunt Nina. That's where I fell." "Baby, you stood there too. They just couldn't handle you. Now go show them how someone walks in without asking permission." The stage that night was different. Humble, unvarnished, no fake gloss. And as the ceremony approached its close, something unexpected happened. A young girl from a small town with light skin and the kind of background that often wins by default walked forward clutching a slip of paper, clearing her throat with earnestness. "I want to give my prize to those who helped open the door for all of us. My mom hates that I'm saying this, but I've grown up enough to realize that when injustice speaks loudly, silence becomes complicity. Amari, if you're here, this is for you." The room paused. Breaths collectively held. Amari stood. No gown, no sparkles, just athletic pants and a plain top. She didn't approach to collect anything. She walked forward and took off the crown from the pedestal. "I don't need this crown anymore. It belongs to you. Every girl who steps on stage, no matter what color, shape, or volume, needs to know the stage belongs not to those who never fall, but to those who become louder after they do." There was no applause, only breathing, because that was what freedom sounded like. Unprompted, unsold, unfiltered. A month later, an official letter arrived, printed on state letterhead, polite, sealed with a government stamp. "We would like to include Amari James's story in the new social justice curriculum module. Do you consent?" She read it, crumpled it in her fist, unfolded it. "I agree, but tell it exactly as it happened. No gloss." Amari never became a blogger. She didn't run for office. She became what she had always wanted, herself. She stopped asking for stages. She became the stage. And now, whenever a young girl steps into light to dance, no matter if she stumbles or her steps aren't perfect, she knows someone is there, waiting, not to laugh, but to reach out. Because sometimes falling isn't failure. It's the only way to make everyone else look up.